You are using your farm accounts wrong, and today I'm going to explain why. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Rise of Kingdoms gameplay episode from your very own Shappy Gaming. Today, we are going to be talking about farm accounts, not about gathering, but instead about how to really make your farm accounts as useful as possible. Now, one of the things that people tend to think about with these farm accounts is that the only thing they're good for is bringing in resources. And while that is partly true, farm accounts have a lot of other uses that tend to get overlooked. One of these big ones is actually being useful in KVK. Now, as kingdoms have gotten smaller, you tend to see farms getting more and more useful in KVK. And the reason for this is that when we look at the top powers within different kingdoms, especially 1079, you tend to see the same people there. And one of the issues that we saw with this particular KVK, and I can zoom out for you guys to show you exactly how it went, was the fact that 1079 had a lot of players, but we didn't have enough players to be able to combat these two extra camps in Kingsland. Now, one of the things that we did learn, and we used this, was that farm accounts are incredibly useful. And the reason for this is that with farm accounts, you can kill your troops left and right, and it really doesn't make a difference, so long as you have a minimum number of siege. Now, here's the troops that I have on this farm account right now. As you can see, I have about 94,000 T4 and then a bunch of T1. This is the perfect ratio. Realistically, if you have a decent farm, you probably don't need more than 100,000 T4 siege. Maybe you could have, a little bit more when it comes to T1, but you really don't want your farms to get too heavy. But what you'll also notice here is that I do have a bunch of T4 units. And the reason for this is when you do fill a structure in KVK, let's say a flag, let's say a fort, let's say a pass, these T4 units all get the benefit of the garrison lead for the tech, which means that even though these are farm troops, they're going to deal a ton of damage to the different opponents that are attacking those structures. And if you're wondering what I'm meaning, let's take a look at some of the reports that we have here. So this farm worked on the pass, and as you can see, was super, super useful. So this farm joined a bunch of different pass rallies before it got zeroed. But as you can see, these rallies were predominantly filled with farms. You have the bank, you have Echo's farm, you have Empress. All of these were farms. And what's neat here is that for our enemies, they were using troops that were not farms. And so you ended up getting a really interesting exchange where we, even in an instance where we might have traded poorly, which honestly we traded positive most of the time, we were ending up killing primary account troops in exchange for farm troops, which was amazing because my farms were racking up kills and deads, and the enemies were racking up deads from their main accounts. Now, this does really depend on the kingdom that you're in. And this is something that I would recommend if there are any R5s or R4s watching this, take this to your kingdom as well. One of the things that 1079 introduced this KVK is actually for the dead troops that you have on your farm accounts, 25% of those deads actually get contributed to your main account, which is really nice because when you're talking about KVK caps and power caps and all that, it helps incentivize people to use their farms for this. Now, your farm may not be ready for this today, and there are a couple ways that we can make sure that it is. For one, if you're anything like me, you ignore your farms a lot, which means that you probably have a bunch of training speedups already there. Heck, I'm sure some people are watching this and they're like, Shappy, your farm has more speedups than my main. Maybe, but I never use it. And so you can train up troops as much as you want. As you can see, I'm just going to start some troops right here. And it's pretty cheap. These are T4 units, so realistically, I'm not losing much from this. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you're in a decent alliance, your income from alliance territory is really going to be more than enough to offset your training. So be sure that you have troops training in the off-season, all T4. If you have existing units, you might want to upgrade your T3 to T4. That's probably the cheapest way to do it, but you want to be using these troops. Now, a couple things to watch out for, because I've made this mistake and I really don't want you to. When you are reinforcing from your farm, a perfect example is Pass 7. So let's go over to Pass 7. That's where we were when we were doing kind of our final stand. See, here we are. Pass 7. When you're reinforcing from your farm, you really want to make sure your enemies do not have access to your zone. Because the problem that I've seen a lot of people run into is if enemies have access to your zone, whether this is you're launching a rally and you're rallying into an enemy zone, if they can kill the units that are in this rally, it is going to hurt so much. But if you are just filling, structures, whether it be a pass, whether it be a rally that you think you might lose, something to that effect, this is the way to go. The number one thing to watch out for, if you're going to use your farms for combat, is do not let your troop get targeted. Now, another thing that I would recommend is make sure that you have commanders for the right unit types. And the reason why this matters is actually more because of march speed than anything else. But I found this to be incredibly painful this time around. It's march speed and being able to identify the commanders. So what I was doing is I was sending Belisarius with calves, and I trained my Herman up a bunch of levels to try and get him so I could send archers with Herman, and then I still need to get someone for infantry. But when you have the right troop type commander with the right unit type, not only does it make it so if your march does get hit, you don't trade quite as poorly, but it also makes it so you get, typically march speed or something like that, or easy identification of the marches that you're sending. This is not a must do, but it is something that is kind of handy. Another thing that you should keep in mind if you're going to do this is you do want to add triple line formation to these marches because you want them to be getting to the rallies, getting to the passes as fast as possible. And you want to be sure that you have the flag, if you can, from the Lost Canyon shop. So I don't have it on this account, but if you can get the Call of the Loyal, this is another thing to easily add it to all of your reinforcement marches, and then just get to the rally even faster. Now, another thing that I actually skipped and then realized midway through KVK is that you can build Crystal Mine and do Crystal Tech up to Swift Marching level 5. And this helps get you a little bit more march speed, because with farms, especially if you're going to be rallying, garrisoning, things like that, you want to be sure that you're getting to the structure as fast as possible. Definitely do this. If you guys need some proof of how well this works, let's come over here and we can take a look at my Hall of Heroes. Again, this did get zeroed, but if we take a look here, you can see I had 162,000 T4 dead. This was actually from filling. I had killed pretty much all of these T4 units before anyone ever touched my city. And so all of these were from filling rallies and garrisoning passes. And I did this not on one farm. I did this on 4 different farms, which meant that I got a bunch more dead on here that I would have never been able to get on my main. And it made it so when I was in Kingsland, I can reinforce structures, I can launch rallies without having to worry about losing deads or hitting my minimums with my main account, because I was already going to, and it made it so I was flexible by the end. Whereas if I had otherwise tried to kill all those troops garrisoning earlier, I would have had a really big problem in terms of meeting my minimums and just having enough troops to field, because if you're anything like me, I send and join as many rallies as I can, regardless. Now let's talk about the ratio though, because you saw all those deads. Let's take a look at how many kills this farm got. Now kills did not count for my kingdom, but I got 1 million kills on this account, pretty much just from reinforcing structures, which is wild. So let's take a look at another account and let's see how that one did. So we can head over to this other account. But my main thing to call out here is when you have your farm accounts, not only should you be sending out to gather, you should always be sending out to gather, but you should be training those T4 units and unlocking all the T4 unit types on your farm accounts so that you can fill structures and garrison with those. Here we go. So if we come into this account, you can see this was, again, just from filling structures. I got all these ads, 251,000, which is pretty good. I mean, this farm only has about 13 million power. Realistically, I think you can probably go up to 20, 25 million power and still be all right. But this account also did great. And again, you saw that many deads. Let's take a look at how many kills this account got. This account raked in almost another 1 million kills. And these are 1 million kills that I would not have gotten otherwise. And this is a massive trade here. You can see it was 200,000 dead for almost 800,000 kills. So if you take anything away from this video, be sure you are training those unit types on your farms and you are garrisoning structures with your farms before your main account. You can always get deads on your main account from joining rallies and doing a little bit more risky things where you're not afraid to get your units swarmed on the way home. But if you're just holding a pass or you're just trying to hold a fort, use your farms. I hope that you've enjoyed. If you have, do hit that subscribe button right over there, bottom right-hand corner. And drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed. Thank you all. Shappy out.